What's next for the Catalan people in Spain? Pro-independence supporters are outraged at the jailing of separatist leaders. Following the latest mass march and violent protests, government leaders in Madrid are dismissing Catalan calls for talks. What are the chances for a political solution? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Deri Nabugedo. It's 2 years since Catalonia tried and failed to break away from Spain, but the campaign for independence hasn't died down. The jailing of separatist leaders this week reignited the debate, sparking a general strike and a mass march from all over Catalonia to Barcelona. Violent protests in the regional capital have raised questions about the reaction from Spain's government in Madrid, especially before next month's national election. The region's pro-independence leader, Quim Torra, has called for unconditional talks with the Spanish government, but the acting Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has dismissed the calls, saying Torra must first unequivocally condemn the unrest.
As I said earlier, it's been 5 days and we still haven't heard Catalan Regional President Torra firmly condemning the violence. The same for members of his cabinet and other regional institutions. Nobody understands that they talk and talk for many minutes at a time without rejecting the violence, nor expressing their solidarity towards the members of the security forces. They must choose the way of the democratic institutions because there is no other way.
Well, the Catalan president's call for talks came 2 days after suggesting a new independence referendum should be held within 2 years. Quim Torra has called for calm, but also said protesters won't shy away from their separatist cause.
The defense of rights and freedoms must always be expressed peacefully. We ask of everyone. Violence has never been and never will be our flag across Catalonia. The cause of rights and freedoms is unstoppable. We will go as far as the Catalans want to go. For months, we have asked the Spanish Prime Minister to set a day and an hour to sit around the negotiating table unconditionally, to speak and to talk.
Well, despite much of the focus being on the pro-independence marches, they're not the only ones campaigning. Opposition rallies have also been held in Catalonia, with many calling for a unified Spain. Charlie Angela has more from Barcelona.
We're now at a pro-unionist rally in Barcelona, and these people have come from throughout the region. They consider themselves proudly Catalonian, proudly Spanish, and they're here to condemn the protests that we've seen in the last few days. People here believe passionately in the unity of Spain, and that is a view that is held by 48% of Catalonians, according to the latest poll that was held in July. And that's versus the 44% of Catalonians who believe that independence is the way forward. And both sides are looking to their politicians for a way out of this crisis. We know that the Catalan president, Quim Torra, has asked the central government to sit down, engage in dialogue, find a way out of this crisis. But so far, the acting Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has rejected those calls for talks. He says Torra must first come out and condemn the violence that we mostly saw on Friday, when protesters were pelting police with rocks and stones and setting fire to bins throughout the city. So it seems that Spain finds itself at an impasse just as another general election approaches. Charlie Angela for Inside Story.
Well, what's led to the latest protests? So the independence question has divided Catalonia for decades. Many believe the region's strong identity, culture, and economy are good reasons for political separation from Spain. Other Catalans don't want change. An independence referendum 2 years ago was held in defiance of government leaders in Madrid who said the vote violated Spain's constitution. Voter turnout was low, but the majority did vote yes for separation. The Catalan parliament in Barcelona quickly declared independence. Spain's government retaliated, taking direct control of the region until the election of a new government. The leaders of the independence movement were charged with sedition and arrested, then given jail sentences of up to 13 years on Monday. Let's bring in our panel to discuss all of this. Joining us from Barcelona via Skype is Juan Rivadea. He's a pro-unionist and member of the Catalan Business Association. In Madrid, via Skype, Carla Suarez, a representative of the Catalan National Assembly. And finally, also via Skype from Barcelona, Juan Rodriguez Teruel. He's an associate professor of political science at the University of Valencia. Welcome to all of you to this edition of Inside Story. Thanks very much for joining us. Juan Rivadea, Spain's government and the acting Prime Minister Sanchez, as you've been hearing, has dismissed the calls from Catalonia's president for talks, saying that he must first unequivocally condemn the unrest. But surely there needs to be a way to address the grievances. So if there's no political dialogue, what happens then?
Well, dialogue in democracies is to be held in the parliament. In the parliament is where you express your ideas, your objective. If you get a qualified majority, you're allowed to move those ideas forward. If you don't get that qualified majority, you need to keep negotiating. You need to keep trying to convince the other MPs to vote your objective, and this is dialogue in a full democracy as in Spain. Outside the parliament, well, you can talk about many issues, but the real dialogue that is going to have efficient effects is in the parliament.
So you think the acting Prime Minister is correct when he dismisses calls for dialogue at this point?
At this point, well, no. I mean, dialogue, theoretically, as I said, it's a good thing if it's done in the right frame of rule of law, and in the right scenario, in the right arena, which is the parliament. To have talks outside the parliament, I think it's futile, because especially when there is instability and violence on the streets. So first of all, what Torra has to do, Mr. Torra has to do, is condemn energetically the violence on the streets, stop the riots, stop the chaos in Barcelona, and when everything is stabilized, to reopen the parliament efficiently and try to discuss their ideas in the parliament, trying to convince a majority of MPs, the qualified majority, to move his ideas forward. To do this outside the rule of law is futile, and it only brings instability and violence.
Juan Rodriguez Teruel, do you agree with that assessment, that dialogue can only be done in Parliament and that's the direction it should go in?
Yes, I completely agree with my colleague. Although my question would be, if this is clear, why it is not possible to reach to this scenario? And in this sense, I think it is very important to understand to what extent political leadership in Madrid, and particularly in Barcelona, are very weakened in recent times. Because not only because we are in an electoral campaign, so political leaders are very attentive to their electorates, and they are taking care about their decisions, trying not to lose some of their voters taking risky decisions. But with a more broad perspective, the problem in Catalonia, and particularly the evolution in the last 2 years, shows the problem of having a very weak leadership. On the Catalan side, because the more important, the more prominent leaders are in jail, and it seems they are going to be for a few more time. And this is not only fueling fury among the secessionist side, but this sentence is also making this movement more difficult to control, because the more the leaders are not there in order to vehiculate, to personalize pragmatic issues. At the same time, in Madrid, we have had for more than 6 months a caretaker government that was issued from a no confidence vote 1.5 years ago, and we have been ruling the country with minority governments for 4 years. We don't have to forget that in November we will have the 4th election in 4 years. So with minority governments, with divided parties at both sides, and with some of the leaders of the secessionist side in jail, it is very hard to see how both sides can engage in pragmatic bargaining in order to find an exit to this problem.
Okay, you raise an important point, many important points, in fact, one of which is on these upcoming Spanish elections, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, let me bring in Carlos Suarez, because Torra, he did say that the violence does not reflect the peaceful nature of the independence movement. But why do you think that he has not unequivocally condemned the unrest and the violence?
Well, to be honest, he has condemned the violence many times. And again, there's been a bit of self-defense from the protesters on the Catalan side. But let's not forget that the sentences to the Catalan political prisoners, which have already spent 2 years in jail, are shameful. Spain has shown to the world that territorial integrity comes first before democracy. And since they were published, the verdict on Monday, there's been a situation of police controlling Catalonia. There's been 579 wounded by the police, including 58 journalists which have been attacked. 4 people have lost an eye on police attacks. 2 protesters are on life-threatening condition right now. There's been 179 arrested, including 21 activists who are in preemptive jail, most of them 18 or 19, so young teenagers, a new generation of Catalan independentists. And the situation right now is of complete chaos.
Okay, but what are the options that the Catalan government is facing?
Well, the Catalan government should try to lead and channel the protest and basically try to find first peace, ensure that there's an end to police violence. Second, freedom, release of all political prisoners. And 3, self-determination, a binding referendum in Catalonia monitored by the European Union.
Juan Rivadea, what's your take on what Carlos Suarez just had to say?
I think that Mr. Suarez has everything wrong. Sorry. It's like we're living in 2 different realities. He's somehow criticizing the police brutality, as I understand him, when there is 300 police wounded. I think everyone who saw the news saw that the police was nothing but content. I mean, the violence that the separatists has imposed Barcelona the last week, it was outrageous. I mean, they claim they are a pacifist movement, but I mean, after.
But surely you understand. But surely you understand, Juan. Surely you understand that people are very angry, particularly after the sentencing of the leaders.
Well, in Spain, and let me put this very clear. In Spain, there are no political prisoners. There are only prisoners who happen to be politicians. They have broken the law. They thought at one point that they were above the law and they could do whatever they wanted. I mean, we live in a full democracy, fully ratified, fully recognized by the European Union, the United Nations. So we are a full democracy with separation of powers, and everything can be discussed. All the ideas can be moved forward if we do it through the right channels, through the right frame of this rule of law. Everything outside the rule of law, it's not possible. And if you go outside this rule of law, it has consequences. And that's what the Catalan secessionist politicians have to confront these consequences.
Okay, Juan Rodriguez Teruel, with the upcoming Spanish election, which you were mentioning just a moment ago, so how will the recent developments, meaning these protests, what impact are they going to have on the election? And will a new government be able to, I don't want to say solve this problem, but make some headway in this issue?
Yeah, I am not sure if this situation right now is going to have a strong impact, as long as the situation will not evolve to a worse scenario. Because so far, what we have seen is mostly Pacific people trying to express their anger with the sentence, but at the same time, we know that most of the Catalan leaders at the government, maybe not the prime minister, but most of his cabinet members, are trying to calm down the situation, waiting for the result of November. I think that the general election will give us more or less the same scenario, but probably with a stronger position for the 2 main Spanish parties, the Social Democratic Party and the Conservative Party. And this situation, and probably the results of the regional election in Catalonia that probably will be held in February next year, will give a new scenario, a new opportunity in order to channelize a pragmatic bargaining, which will not be, in any case, the status quo, and probably not anyway a referendum of secession, which is completely rejected by political elites and by an important side of the Catalan population.
Carla Suarez, go ahead. I see you shaking your head. Go ahead.
I mean, all the polls of the last 10 years have shown that around 80% of the Catalan population wants a self-determination referendum. So it's just nonsense to say that.
But let me, hang on, let me stop you right there. Which polls are you referring to? Because the latest poll that we have found here at Al Jazeera is that it shows that the backing for the secession is, in fact, at its lowest level in 2 years, with 48.3% of people against and now 44% in favor. So there seems to be a drop. Why is that?
That's correct. There's a 50-50 divide between the pro-secession camp and the unionist camp, but there is a consensus across the aisle that the referendum is the solution, as is in normal democracies to solve complex situations. But you have to ask yourself, is Spain really a democracy? Another issue that has caused a lot of anger is not only the sentence itself, but the day in which it was published. Let's not forget that happened on the Monday, 14th of October, which is exactly the same day that in 1940, 79 years earlier, the Spanish fascist regime sentenced to death the Catalan president Lluís Companys, which is the only democratically elected president to be murdered by fascism. Nothing has changed in Spain. They do not respect democracy. Territorial integrity comes first, and it's time for the people to speak.
Okay, let's put that to Juan Rivadea. I mean, is what we're seeing happen, unfold in the streets of Barcelona, Catalonia, is it calling into question the sort of quality and integrity of the Spanish democracy?
Well, I mean, the Spanish democracy, its strength, it's in its laws. Its laws, as I said, are recognized, are ratified by the European Union, the UN, as one of the full democracies in the world. This is the strength of the Spanish democracy. And the strength of the Spanish democracy is to make sure that we fight against the people, about those irresponsible politicians who wants to break the rule of law, who they think they're above the law, and they think they can move forward with their ideas outside this frame of the rule of law. This is the strength of the Spanish democracy. And again, the politicians in jail they are in jail not because of their ideas, but because of their actions. There are many politicians in Catalonia. They are independentists, and they are not in jail because they defend their ideas, and they have not committed the actions that are illegal, and has forced the authorities and has forced the judicial power to put them in jail. So this is the strength of the Spanish democracy, that it can defend itself from people who wants to break the rule of law and the stability of the Spanish society.
How much do you think, Juan, that the upcoming election campaign in Spain will be about, or Catalonia will feature in that election campaign?
So obviously it's going to have a huge impact because, all this instability, all the violence is affecting the whole society, not only the Catalan society, but also the Spanish society, who is watching live how a part of its territory it's in risk of disintegration, is a risk of irresponsible politicians trying to install this regime outside the law. And obviously this is affecting everyone, not only in Catalonia but in Spain. So everyone is worried about this situation, and obviously people voting outside Catalonia are also going to have their mind thinking in Catalonia when they cast that vote.
Juan Rodriguez, the criticism by some is that the pro-independence Catalan government appear to look like they're speaking for all Catalans. But as we were mentioning just a moment ago, some polls show that the region is evenly split between those that want independence and those that don't want independence. Would that be a correct assessment?
Completely. One of the achievements of the secessionist movement during this decade is that most of the traditionally pragmatic nationalist electorate has now become factually as a secessionist, or have advanced to secessionist positions. And but in the end, we still follow the traditional pattern of Catalan politics, divided between half part of the population for supporting nationalist or more self-government, even secession, and the other half side of the population supporting different kinds of self-government agreements, but always remaining in Spain. And I think this is something that has not changed during these years. And many people acknowledge that this is why probably a simple referendum of secession, as sometimes it is argued, is not exactly a solution. So what we know is that we need people, like in other countries in similar conflicts, we need political leaders to get some stability and some capacity to rule over their electorates in order to implicate them in pragmatic and constitutional agreements. And this is why we still need this kind of political stability after the general and the regional election in order to try it this way.
Carlos, has the pro-independence movement been weakened somewhat, considering that there are still a large number of people who don't want independence in Catalonia? And we saw that in one of the demonstrations where our reporter went to.
Yeah, well, I think the reporter will have witnessed the difference in numbers in demonstrations of the unionist demonstration today versus the march on the general strike day on Friday, in which millions of Catalans went on the roads. But still, you are completely right. There's a split. And what do democracies do when there is a split? They organize referendums. So that's all we're asking. Nothing else. A minority should not impose to a majority. Let the people decide, and let's organize a referendum. The unionist side always says that we should obey the law. But how can you obey a law in a country which does not want to solve complex issues by a diplomatic and democratic means? That's why there was a unilateral referendum in 2017, and still today, in 2019, 2 years later, the Spanish government hasn't done anything about it, and that's why the protesters are on the streets. But let me tell you something. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. That's where we are right now in Catalonia, and we'll see a referendum very soon.
Juan Rivadea, I see you shaking your head. What are your thoughts on this ambition for another referendum? And how do you think that the Spanish government, whichever Spanish government is in power, will respond?
Well, I mean, it's very easy for the independentists to move ahead with a referendum. They just need to follow, again, the rule of law. There are laws. In Spain, you can have a referendum, of course. The only thing is that you need to follow the rules in order to reach to that referendum. You need first a qualified majority in the Catalan parliament of 2/3. From there, you go to the Spanish parliament. You need to get majority as well. Then you need to change the constitution, and then you can have the referendum. There is a path. There is a already legislated clear path to get to that referendum. What you cannot do is to say, look, since this path is difficult, because obviously democracies, in order to guarantee stability, they need to have a consensus of qualified majorities. Since it is, I understand that it's difficult to reach to that referendum there that they are aiming. But since they think that it's difficult, they say, okay, since it's too difficult, since we need to have a qualified majority that at this moment we believe we cannot reach, we're gonna jump outside this frame, this legal frame that even the Catalans has decided to live in, and we're gonna decide our own way.
Okay.
This is impossible.
Juan Rodriguez. Yes, go ahead, complete your thought.
So again, what I'm saying, there are many countries where you will never have this referendum. In Germany, those independent political parties are forbidden by constitution. In Spain, you can defend any idea, you can have any objective, any political objective, but you have to do it through the right channels, following the right path and following all the laws. Outside the law, it's impossible. You cannot do anything. But inside the law, you can do everything. Within the Spanish constitution. All
right, I'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us and speaking to us. Juan Rivadea, Carlos Suarez, and Juan Rodriguez Teruel, thanks very much for joining us. Thank you for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From myself and the whole team here in Doha, thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.